Okay guys, it is of course Tuesday. It is the 19th of April 2016 and for some reason this image is still not fitting the screen, but I'll quickly fix that as if in a really bad edit. Humble have given us a new bundle this week called the Humble Devolver Digital Bundle, and with some of the softer V on R, that's quite hard to say, so Devolver, there you go. So without further ado, let's get rid of this and get rid of that and get straight into it. Straight off the bat, pay what you want. So not even a dollar, but that's pretty much the given amount that's going to actually be asked for. We've got 3 games here. We have got a Fistful of Gun, Ronan, and Gods Will Be Waiting. Well, not waiting, watching. Sorry, Gods Will Be Watching. Blah. So straight in then, Fistful of Gun is actually quite weird. It's a $9.99. It's at $9.99 on Steam at the moment. And it's a pixel art top-down shooter game where you can basically play up to 9 players. That's right, 9. So, hang on, 9. 9 players, both online or locally, through a combination of using the keyboard, joypad, mouse, pretty much any kind of control device locally, and obviously online is more multiplayer-esque. It's got some incredibly great reviews, and as you can see from just the video playing in the background, it looks quite a lot of fun. Sort of, I'm trying to think what's the best sort of thing. It's not even Bomberman-esque, really, is it? It's sort of just run and gun, general sort of shoot everything, do anything, that kind of stuff. Definitely worth a good look at, especially considering Ronan. Now, Ronan reminds me a lot of I've forgotten what you can call it. It reminds me a lot of sort of Mark of the Ninja, which if you know what I'm talking about, you'll understand. It also reminds me a lot of an indie game, and I've completely forgotten what it is. You basically mess around with electronics and wear this sort of coat that's supposed to give you the ability to leap through windows and stuff like that. It's quite a cool little game. But it's actually, anyway, back to Ronan. It's $9.99 on Steam currently, and its description is a turn-based 2D stealth ninja game. As you can see from the actual video that's playing, you actually sort of execute different instructions over time. So you sort of see someone and everything sort of freezes, and you sort of choose what you do next. So you can sort of attack one guy, then get a turn and shoot a little bit. You then get to sort of move on to the next person, and so on and so on and so on. So it's generally a sort of a interesting sort of take on the 2D sort of fighter platformer. Again, definitely worth a good look at because it's got some good reviews on Steam, and you're laughing with the price, really, aren't you? Gods Will Be Watching. Now, I'm going to use the term point and click game loosely here, and it's worth sort of. It says that it is a minimalistic point and click thriller game. It's again a more pixel art sort of style point and click game where you basically play or take on the sort of role as managing a sort of scenario. You sort of have to play these different scenarios as the story progresses, and you have to sort of manage and maintain the people in this sort of scenario. So, for instance, one of the sort of scenarios at the beginning is that you've taken hostages, and you've got to try and keep as many people alive as possible without sort of allowing the hostages to escape while you're busy hacking something. So you've got to try and make sure the power levels don't fall below, the hostages don't get too crazy. It's sort of one of those things that you sort of have to manage slowly, and unfortunately in some ways it's quite tedious. So a lot of people weren't quite happy with how it was sort of advertised as a point and click game. It's more sort of a management simulator or something along those sort of lines. That's not to say it's a bad thing. Apparently it is quite well received in terms of story and what it's about, but it's not necessarily your cup of tea if you're used to the usual standard puzzle point and click games. It's $6.99 on Steam at the moment. Well, it depends on what you think. It's not really your classic kind of point and click game, but it's something that you might quite like if you're into sort of, I suppose, want to see how the story develops. It's worth a look at. Come on, you know, just for $1, it's worth a look at. Blue tier we'll come back to in just a minute, but straight into the green tier, which at the moment is $4, which is quite good. Not a hero, right? I am going to really struggle how to describe this one. It's short of saying it's a pixel art 2D shooter game where you basically play a variety of different characters, very eccentric characters. It involves time travel, it involves balls, as you just saw, violence, It's essentially a rather interesting 2D pixel art shooter where you basically run around as different characters. Sort of imagine Broforce, but sort of combined with the ninja game that we just looked at, Ronan and everything. And you basically running around shooting things as these strange characters, different eccentric characters, different guns, different explosions, different terrorists, bad guys, everything. It's that's pretty much as you're going to get out of it beyond actually reading the description and wow, that was quite a good explosion, and finding a reason to sort of pick up a gun and shoot people, really. And Tom Jones. $9.99 on Steam. Why not? You know, you may as well. Shadow Warrior I can talk about. Shadow Warrior is pretty simple. Shadow Warrior is actually a reimagining or a reboot, if you want to call it, of the original 3D Realms game back in the sort of before the turn of the century. If you don't know anything about that game, it essentially was sort of the sequel to Duke Nukem 3D, where 3D Realms wanted to improve upon what they did with Duke Nukem 3D, and came up with this idea of a guy with a sword running around and killing bad guys. Now, unfortunately, because of the technology back then, the sword play wasn't really what they wanted. It just basically chopped enemies in half and everything else like that. Fast forward almost a decade on, and the company Flying Wild Hog took the IP and used it to create a sort of mass shooter, first-person shooter, utilizing the Shadow Warrior sort of lore and elements. They sort of changed the character somewhat, added in added in a whole new storyline, and changed the whole sort of shooter-esque game that was made in the beginning, and altered it completely. It was extremely well received. It's quite a good game. Now, I'll warn you straight away that if you've played a game called Hard Reset, you'll understand exactly how this game works. It's essentially a huge sort of move to this point, get attacked by enemies, move to this point, get attacked by enemies. The amount of plot line that you actually get during a level is quite limited. It's not sort of, pick up this key card, go over here, do this. Yeah, you go upstairs and push buttons, go upstairs and ladders and push buttons and everything like that. And overall, the environments are quite interesting, but you can instantly tell it's one of those sort of games that you move from room to room and shoot loads of bad guys and blow them up using different guns and everything like that. So it can get a little tedious. But they've added things in like special moves. You can do all kinds of things with the sword. There's a lot of different sort of elements within the game. That's quite good fun, and it's quite well received. It's actually spawning a sequel at some point soon, where I believe the emphasis is going to be on the sort of sort of cooperative play. In that the main character Lo Wang has actually got 3 extra friends with him that basically go around and kill demons and stuff, as in the previous game. But that's out there. This is now. So the game itself is quite good. I can heartily recommend it. It's definitely worth it, just for the sheer fact that you can get a load of guns and you can kill a load of demons in lots of different ways. I'll admit to you, it is a bit annoying in some ways, because you do get a bit sort of fed up with killing the bad guys, and if you get inundated, which does happen, you can get killed quite easily. There you go. That's how you could pretty thorough play. Oh, it's $29.99 on Steam. Nearly forgot that. So it's actually one of the most expensive games here. But okay. Dropsy. Now, this has been actually part of the Humble Monthly Bundle, and has been released on there too. So it's how the hell do I explain this one? It's another point-and-click adventure game, where you basically play a clown that goes on a journey of self-discovery. It's a more sort of idealistic sort of point and click games where there's no sort of actual talking. You're sort of more communicating with pictures and verbs and everything else like that. And as you can see by the art style, it's completely crazy when it's everything. It's completely crazy looking, and in general, it just okay, that's even weirder. It's a very strange game. It's won all kinds of awards and everything. It's been extremely well praised for what it does and what it is, and it's definitely worth a good look at. You know, at $6.99 on Steam, why not? You know, and only obviously you probably don't want to play it if you're scared of clowns, even clowns with no hands who hug everybody for no reason whatsoever or kiss squirrels, as you just saw, or the fridge. So regardless of that, definitely worth a good look at. Now, this one might divide a lot of people. Instantly, I can see people saying, "Why are we not getting the full game? Why are we only getting a coupon?" The Talos Principle is, well, first of all, it's $29.99 both on Steam and on Humble. So the coupon you get will actually knock it down to about £15. It's still quite a new game. Now, if you don't know what it is, the Talos Principle, or Talos, or however you pronounce it, basically is a game about an AI that you play as an artificial intelligence or a robot. I'm not going to spoil the story much more than that, other than you basically are exploring a world, solving puzzles, utilizing a variety of different machinery, and trying to identify what you are and what's going on. It's still quite new. It's actually made by the same people who made Serious Sam. Now, don't let that necessarily put you off, because the game itself has won countless awards. It's extremely well received. It's got some good DLCs in it as well. You don't get it as part of this bundle, but it's still quite an interesting game in terms of that. But overall, what I would say is don't buy this bundle just for the voucher, because if you're smart enough, you know that games like this will be in future bundles. It was actually in the monthly bundle as well. That was like 2-3 months ago. So Humble have actually given this away as part of the monthly bundle. It will always come down in price, and it's always worth just waiting and seeing. Now, of course, unless you're that desperate to play it, go ahead. But overall, for 50% off, you know, is it really worth it? I honestly don't really think so in terms of that, especially when you'll be getting a lot of other games with it that you could just play to wait until this actually comes down in price in the actual stores. And that's kind of, you know, that's actually one of the good things I think about PC gaming in terms of sales like this, is that they exist. Console games don't tend to have this kind of the level of sales that PC games do. So it's actually probably worth just waiting and seeing if you're that interested in Talos Principle. More games coming soon. Now, it's difficult to say because Devolver Digital has been involved in quite a lot of independent games as well as other things. You've got things like Hotline Miami, you've got some Serious Sam stuff. You know, it could go pretty much anywhere as well. You know, there's some good stuff that they've done, and there's also some not so good stuff. And as you'll see from when we go and have a look at the Telltale stuff, that it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get anything new that's going to be quite good. So you'll have to sort of wait and see. But we'll have a look and see next week, hopefully, and decide and you can decide for yourself whether it's worth looking at. Right, so blue tier, which is $10 or more. We got two more games, which Titan Souls has also been in the monthly bundle, and now I always get this wrong. It's a similar sort of game to Shadows of the Colossus, where you basically play it's a top-down pixel art fighter with sort of magic spells and swords and arrows and all that kind of thing. It's $10.99 on Steam, and you basically go around fighting off, having to sort of fight off and destroy all the titans of the world. It's divided a lot of people. Lots of people like it and think it's quite unique, quite a clever game. Other people say it's not that. It is unique, but it's also not that good. It's quite annoying in places. It's one of those games that sort of divides people in some ways. For $10 though, I could hardly recommend it. It's actually on my list of games to play at some point in the future, as is actually Talos Principle, because it definitely intrigues me, but at the end of the day, I'm pretty certain it's definitely worth $10. Definitely worth a good look at. Finally, now this game's going to be impossible. and I never pronounce this right, and people keep telling me off for mispronouncing it. The game is Hatoful Boyfriend Holiday Star. Now, if you have heard of Hatoful Boyfriend, then you know that this is actually the sequel to it, or sort of the holiday sequel to it. It's basically a game reminiscent of sort of the Japanese... what's the sort of story-esque games where you're looking at images of sort of manga characters and you're talking to them. I know there's a specific style that has completely escaped me now, and I can't actually think what it is. But it's that sort of esque games. But instead, actually, I'll tell you what. I'll click on it and you can see it for yourself. It's the original game was basically you're human in the world of birds, and you have to try and find love. Now, this is actually the sequel to it, where it's actually a Christmas sort of version of it. But even then, it's still weird as hell. You know, it's not going to be something that makes you sort of reach out and say, yes, I want to buy it, unless you sort of love that. That's it, a visual novel. That's it. I actually had to search for Hatoful Boyfriend to find one of the tags. It's it's definitely a weird game, but it's extremely well received. So the storyline itself is actually quite interesting, I suppose. But it's going to be one of those things that, unless it really tickles your fancy, I can't really see it, you know, being of a great importance to the bundle. You know, it certainly doesn't fill me with a sort of desire to buy it immediately. Right, okay. Enough talking of this bundle. Let's shoot over quick to Telltale. Now, I have to say, last week I was quite impressed with what you got for the $12. Overall, you know, you got an awful lot of games for the money that you did, and you also got an awful lot of content. You know, it was even asked to me last week by a user called The Real Languish. So hello if you're watching The Real Languish, asking me if I was sure that you actually got the full games in these actual bundles, and apparently the answer is yes, you do. You do get the whole thing of you get all the episodes of all the games in this thing. Now they've actually added 2 new games. Now, as predicted, they put in Jurassic Park the game. Now, you'll be excused if you've never heard of this game. I never heard of it until I saw it in, I think it was a Builder bundle at Christmas time. And I had no clue as to what the hell it was about. I hadn't even knew that Telltale had made a game about Jurassic Park. So you can imagine my surprise when I saw it and sort of had a look at it. It's essentially set after the first movie with a whole load of new characters and a whole different sort of story, a whole sort of, you know, storyline of escaping the island after the events of what happens in the first movie. It's probably considered to be one of the weakest games Telltale has actually made. Sadly, the biggest sort of criticisms about it is the plotline. The characters are all quite mediocre and quite boring, and overall, people just don't necessarily like this game. Not that they're saying that it's terrible, but it's just not really something that makes full use of Telltale's ability in telling a story and everything. It just feels like something that they've sort of taken the IP from Universal and done the best they can with it, and it's not very good. The second game that's been added is a game that came along fairly early on in Telltale's development of point-and-click games, called Strong Bad's Cool Game for Attractive People, Season 1. Now, I'll point out that, although it does say Season 1, there was never any other seasons made. It was only ever one season. Now, apparently Strong Bad is a character that made by... is on a website called homestarrunner.com. Now, admittedly, I've never heard of it. Or him, to be honest with that. But I had actually seen the game being advertised in various ways on the internet and elsewhere. It's quite well received. It was one of Telltale's first ever sort of games that they made. It's still extremely expensive, amazingly. It's still $22.99 on Steam. So it's definitely one of those games that sort of matches the whole sort of Telltale movement. I mean, the majority of these games are still quite high in price. So if you've paid $12 and got all of these games, you're seriously laughing in terms of the bundle. You know, admittedly, Strongman's the only game out of the whole bundle that I don't have, and even then, you know, for the price of $12, I might just get the extra keys so I can use them for giveaways or something later on in the future. But I'll come to that decision by myself later on. Alright, that's pretty much it for this week, guys. As always, like, subscribe, comment, dislike, which some of you do, as to what you think and about both these bundles or my reviews. I'm always happy to listen to other people's points of view, and I will hopefully see you next week for another bundle, and to see what they add to this bundle for Devolver Digital. So, as always, I'm Cosmo the Coder, and thank you very much for watching my video. I will see you next week for more videos, I hope.